Hello, world. Hello, America. You got the American Awakening Squad coming to you from all around the country. We're real excited to be with you today. It's a beautiful summer day where we are. I hope it is where you are too. We're going to have a great show today. We're going to talk a little bit more about the American Awakening book. We got a special guest. I'll hold off on talking about Dr. Robin until a little bit here. First, let's have JBJ kick us off with a little worship music. What do you got, JBJ?
Sweet. Going back to the hymns. So there's a different version here. So I hope you like it. So. All to Jesus I surrender. All to him I freely give. I will ever love and trust him. In his presence daily live. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Ooh, all to Jesus I surrender. Humbly at his feet I bow. Worldly pleasures I'll forsaken. Take me, Jesus, take me now. I surrender. I surrender. I surrender. Oh. All to Jesus I surrender. Lord, I give myself to thee. Fill me with thy loving power. Let thy blessing fall on me. I surrender. I surrender. I surrender. Oh, yeah. All to thee, my blessed Savior. All to thee, my blessed Savior. All to thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all the joy of full salvation. Sin and death defeated. Glory to his name. I surrender. I surrender. Ooh, I surrender. Oh. Ooh, all to thee, my blessed Savior. All to thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender. Oh, yeah.
Come on, Josh.
Let's go. Come on,
Come on.
JBJ.
All right.
That was amazing.
Woo.
That was amazing.
every day's good, but that one's up there as one of the top in the past 100 shows.
I think, we have something that good. You just got to say thank you, everybody, for coming. We're going to call it a day. We're just gonna wrap it right
Exactly.
No,
Exactly.
we're out. Thank you, Josh. That was so beautiful, man. I really appreciate that. All right, Pastor Joel, what do we got on the Daily Dose?
All right, everybody. Great to be with you today. I want to talk for a minute today about what it takes to put work into relationships. We're going to talk, I think, a lot more about this as the show goes on. But when I think about being wronged or when I've wronged someone, my tendency is generally to withdraw. Now, that may not be true for all of you, but many of us prefer to avoid confrontation and confession and truth telling and accusation and restoration, which is something that we really need right now. We've got to tell truth. We've got to confess. We've got to lament. We've got to own stuff. It's difficult work and it's not enjoyable most of the time. Now, we often think we know how it's going to play out, and so we just avoid it, a lot of us. We tell ourselves a whole story ahead of time. We play out these mock conversations, and it ends in our heads in terrible ways. And so we convince ourselves that the worst case scenario is how this conflict is going to play out. But I want to take us to a place in the letter to the Ephesians in the Bible where Paul talks to the people in Ephesus that he's trying to lead, and like, what does it look like to follow Jesus? We just said this amazing rendition of I surrender. Like, okay, I surrender, but what does surrender mean in relationship? Because it doesn't mean like getting stepped on or submission that's unhealthy. But Paul says this: make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. Now, I don't like to hear this because of the effort part, right? It flies in the face of my tendency, which is I want to bail out. I'm done with this. And yet there's something about this that says we're already united. He says to keep the bond of the Spirit, to keep the unity of the peace. And it's a gift for us to accept that he's already given to us, is how I take this passage. And all we need to do is to get in there in the trenches with him and work this gift. And that's not the kind of work where you got to create it out of thin air. It's there. We've got to cultivate it. And so there truly is no us and them, which is one of the things we say a lot in the American Awakening. I think we're going to really demonstrate that on this show. I hope and pray that we are together and we need each other up close in person, but we have to put in the effort, working the soil, the peace and the unity that God has already made a way for us. And so that's my prayer for us today, is that we can live into that reality together. And that's your Daily Dose. Back to you, John.
Well, there you go. There you go. That's a good word in any day. And on a day in which we're going to talk about being together, right, Jeff Bethke? Then I'll just lateral the football over to you, man, and let you roll with it, brother.
Lateral. Look at that. Man, I love Fridays, you guys, because if you don't know, I got a bunch of stuff in my book. I was going to hold my book up, but a bunch of stuff just fell out because I have all my pages marked. But American Awakening in Focus, our Friday segment. I have a blast around these conversations. It's super fun. And yeah, this chapter is on you need people and to engage in person. And I love this chapter. I can't wait to get into it too, because John, how fun is it that you wrote this before COVID and quarantine, and how pertinent is it, right, with technology and connections of that matter. And so we have a special guest with us. Our guest is Dr. Robin Henderson Espinoza. Robin is a PhD and has been described in a myriad of ways. I wish I had all these describers: a scholar activist, scholar leader, thought leader, teacher, public theologian, ethicist, poet of moral reason, and word artist. Robin is a visionary thinker who has spent 2 decades working in the hybrid space of church, academy, and movements, seeking to not only disrupt, but dismantle supremacy culture by focusing their PhD studies on new concepts of being and becoming, decolonizing knowledge production, and bridging with radical difference. Robin, we're so stoked you are here. I wanted to toss to you because I also like where our guests get to kind of share their own bio a little bit. And I just wanted to, the question I like to ask is, what is exciting you right now about your work, and especially in this moment? And that can kind of lead us into our discussion.
Well, I think this is really exciting. This really is a testament to togetherness, I think. And I mean, I just feel really excited to be here. I feel excited about the work that the Activist Theology Project is doing around bridging with radical difference, and, you know, in many respects, trying to suture the wounds of the American soul. And we, as we all know, we are in unprecedented times living in a global pandemic, and we have no federal leadership. And I think we need people of faith and people of consciousness to really rise up and begin to suture these wounds. And I feel really excited to be a part of that work and to be a part of this network, and looking really forward to the conversation on relationships and togetherness. It's a value of mine of being in conjunto with one another, of practicing a radical togetherness. So I'm really looking forward to being here. Thanks so much for having me.
That's awesome. And you just said suture the wounds. What was it? Suture whatever that was. Like you're a word. I read you're a word artist, and you just proved it right there. That was kind of unfair and incredible, and I love that.
Thank you.
So good. But okay, so let's just jump into the discussion. You need people. John, I want to toss to you first question, and then anyone else can jump in. You know, this chapter, just to give some background for some people, is exactly what we've already kind of been alluding to: togetherness, right? And then we have these wounds of isolation at some level, a division, all these different types of things, and how you spent a lot of time, John, talking about how technology is one of those main tools, almost weapons of really pulling us apart, even though it obviously has immense blessing. That's obvious as well, in connection and communication and education. But John, how would you, this was just an interesting chapter where I was thinking, like, how much more has this become true in this moment, right? Because you wrote this before COVID, before quarantine. How would you change anything? Would you add anything? Would you feel anything that's more stronger?
You know, it's really interesting, Jeff. You know, the things we wrote, you know, last year, it was end of last year, we're striving to get this out in the middle of 2020 because we thought 2020 was going to be an awful year.
And you were right.
Well, yes, but I
know.
I didn't know I'd be right this way. So you know, so we thought that in line with Dr. Robbins' points, you know, that the wounds of the American soul were obvious and those needed to be sutured, and we describe it as restoring the soul of America and our language. Same point though. So we knew that was there, latent already. We knew that the election cycle was going to happen. What we didn't know was Corona, and what we did not know was the racial reckoning was going to come in this way. And so basically, we look back right before we pushed, you know, the button to publish it. We look back and we said, should we change it? Because a lot has changed since we wrote this, and we're like, nah, the principles are still the same. They just happen to be more obviously needed right now than they were before. You know, I would have preached the gospel in past cycles, past years. Others have as well, about the fact that we've, you know, sort of taken away from our soulfulness as people by thinking that somehow a Facebook friend is a replacement for actually sitting with somebody for coffee. You know, I when I was writing the chapter, one of the things I struck me was, you know, and I lived through the cycle of this, but just it's funny how we normalize unusual things. When I first, you know, was an early technology adopter with something called BlackBerry. For those of you of Jeff,
I know I read that in the chapter and I was like, a black what? What is that? BlackBerry? I've never. Is that?
I had a BlackBerry.
Oh,
I had a BlackBerry. I loved BlackBerry Messenger.
Oh yeah, BBM. Didn't they call it BBM? Yeah. I'm all joking though. My mom had one, so I do remember. You know,
I have to be pretty aggressively technology forward, you know, business, and so we had them, and nobody else had them, right? And everybody would look at you like you're a crazy human being, you know. And so you look down and you look away from human beings. You look down, and everybody's like, "What are you doing?" Right? And then there's this little funny anecdote when my youngest child, who's now 17, he tossed mine in the toilet several times. Either
you're like, is that on accident? We don't know.
Unclear. But the point is, that thing that was so weird back then and so pain-inducing for people who didn't have them because it was so strange is now entirely normalized. And the point that I observed in the book, you know, when it came to my attention, that the most recent data is that we look at our phones on average 2,600 times a day, that every time you are looking at your phone or whatever it is, isolating in some way, you're taking yourself away from a real human interaction with a person right there in front of you a lot of the time, not in COVID, you know, to somehow decouple yourself from real life to go someplace else. And it's just not who we're made to be, right?
Yeah. Well, I loved your image, and you said like if you imagine turning your back 2,600 times or whatever.
Yeah,
you know?
so that's what occurred to me at the time. I was like, wait a second. You'd never get away with saying to your wife, okay, I'm just going to turn my back on you while you're talking and look the other way, completely ignore you. You'd never get away with that. But effectively, you're doing that when you look away. And so a year ago, we might have sort of recognized that sort of. But now that we're all sort of isolated away, we realize the pain and the longing that's in our soul to be together. I think it's an easier message to convey now.
Yeah. Why? When I was reading that part too, I even had that same image even farther down the road of like, imagine someone popping in your door 2,600 times to interrupt a conversation you're having with another person. You know, what I mean? That's in 2,600 times. Imagine if you have 2,600 real human interruptions from another person coming into a conversation you're trying to have with a real person that's with you, right? Yeah. That's just like, then you just think about that's because that's what it is. We're not talking to robots on the internet, right? That's just a medium and a platform with real people on the other side, but those real people, are interrupting whatever people are in front of you at some level. And so,
it's a wonderful image, Jeff, and thank you for bringing that up. And it just to stay with that for a minute. If you were a polite, courteous human being, on the first one you say, "I'm sorry, I'm with somebody." The first one you would, but we just don't even think that way anymore. Yeah. We do it at scale, and it's so normalized. Because
it's reformed and changed our habits. So totally. So, Robin, what about you? I mean, reading this chapter, is there anything specifically that stood out to you with these topics of connection, isolation, technology, specifically with your work, where you kind of see this cross section or intersection of the work you're doing with it?
Yeah, absolutely. Part of my practice in being a public theologian is learning to shut down the technology. And so every Friday I take a tech Sabbath where I am offline for 24 hours so that I can actually be human with my partner at home and invest in real-time conversation, because as John explains, that as such a gift and blessing that technology is, it's actually very disruptive to the nervous system, to our conversations when like if I'm having a conversation with my partner and my phone buzzes. I mean, my partner's like, and I keep my phone on silent all the time, but it still buzzes. And so, my partner is like, can we not bring our phones to dinner? And so absolutely, technology is a mixed blessing, right? It's given us the ability to be connected like right now. And also it's creating divisions. And also we need to talk about the accessibility to technology. Not everyone has accessibility to the kind of technology that would bring us together, which is like some of the racial disparity that I think we're learning in these times.
Oh, that's a really good point. I love that tech Sabbath. Everyone needs to take a tech Sabbath, and solidarity too, because me and my wife Alyssa, we do the exact same thing on Saturdays. So we need to start doing it on Fridays like you. Yeah. But there's something about it where it replenishes it, like it kind of refills. And but there's this weird tension too, where I've noticed in our soul, but I start itching. You know what I mean? Like it's like I want to do it, but then we do it for 24 hours. But around hour 19, I'm like almost turning into Gollum or whatever from Lord of the Rings. You know what I mean? Just wanting my precious back. Yeah. But that shows you that you literally, that's why you're doing it. There's something, you almost have this detoxing, I
think it's
go ahead, Marissa.
I was going to say, I think it's also right. It's interesting. It's hard to give up anything in your life without like the vision of something better to hold on to. And one of the things that I thought that was actually really beautiful from, Film Geek over here was when you quoted, is it Martin Buber? Is it Buber?
Buber.
Yeah.
Go with Buber. That's funnier.
Yeah, right. I think I'll go with that. So Martin Buber, and this idea of
I love that quote.
Yeah, right. Describing the magic that exists between human beings when we're connected with each other. When two people relate to each other authentically and humanly, he wrote, God is the electricity that surges between them. Now, that quote is so great. One, it's just like, what? But then it's also like when you think about the chemistry you meet with just anybody that you're vibing with, like your best friends, the people when you first met them, or like when you're watching a movie and there's some sort of like meet cute, where like people are meeting one another, and,
Yeah.
and you always like look at chemistry and you're like, oh, that like what is that? What is that? The idea that somebody actually gave words to God is the electricity that surges between people
Yeah.
when there's that thing, that to me is a more beautiful vision. I bet
Yeah.
most people have never
Yeah.
Yeah.
thought that they would experience something like that.
Well, and
if
the
that really
opposite's
is out
true.
there, yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
Well, the opposite's true. Like the electricity that flows between two humans when there's a phone involved is the actual electricity in the phone, not the human connection anymore. You know what I mean? Like it's like that you really need the two embodied flesh, you know what I mean? Like people to have that human interaction and electricity. I love
yeah.
that.
And I think about people who, I'm sorry, Joel, just really quickly, like younger folks who maybe again sort of grew up with like they've
Yeah.
only known this, you know, like I'm really hoping that everybody at some point in their
Totally.
life experiences that, right? That
Yeah.
like that God electricity surging. How can you beat that?
Totally.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna play on that piece because I think one of the things that as we talk about our hope and our vision together of this radical togetherness and being with people who are just not like us, I think we've been conditioned for so long, especially people who might be listening that are like church people or you've been a Christian for your whole life, whatever you want to say, is like, I can only connect with certain kinds of people. And yet
Yeah.
what Buber is saying there is like, no, actually God can connect you with every kind of person because actually it's God that is making the connection. And I want to reach a little bit here because my short friendship with Robin, I think is a great example of that. We could not be probably more different. Maybe we could be a little more different, but we're pretty different from each other.
Yeah.
And when we spent some time together in Vermont, there was that I would describe it, Robin. I don't want to pose on you, but I would describe that electricity. Like, man, there was just a connection.
Yeah.
I appreciated you. I
Yeah.
hope you appreciated me. And then it went from the human to a little bit of digital, and the digital then was infused with the life because we had the human connection, you know.
Yeah.
And so like a text
Yeah, it has
message
to be
meant a
supplemental.
lot.
Mhm.
Yeah, right. And so,
Mhm.
you know, then a text message is super meaningful. And Robin sent me a text message when I was having a really hard time in January, just like, hey, praying for you. That meant so much. That would have meant nothing if the only time I ever interacted was like, oh, I saw Robin on a podcast. But
Yeah.
it meant something because we had the electricity together. So I think it's
That's a
like
really good point.
understanding that and
Yeah.
that electricity, the point is like, that's the thing that draws us together.
Yeah.
Well,
It's like go ahead.
Well, I think Joel, you make a great point. Like you're having a transgender person onto your podcast and a queer person and that we can be together in this work
Mhm.
and that we can follow the ways of Jesus in this work
Mm.
together. Like that is the beautiful tapestry, you know, the space between us is where God resides.
Mm.
And
Good, man.
the beautiful tapestry that creates. Yeah, I want to be a part of that work.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Good.
But
Amen.
something that's interesting though, and again, in the pursuit of radical togetherness, and also the very honest observation that in a lot of ways it can be uncomfortable, like especially right now, right? In the moment we find ourselves in, it's usually spending time sitting in the unfamiliar, right? And the diversity of all of us. I also think, again, and this is not to knock technology, because something I think, John, you do a wonderful job of describing in the book, is that technology in itself is not evil, right? It's a tool that we have yet to manage well, and learn how to steward well. But I think that there is something about, again, no one really knows exactly how it works, but the Facebook algorithm, right, is something that is designed to continue to feed the things that we are accustomed and what is familiar, right? So again, I can also see technology creating a space that is almost escapist at times, right? Rather, we can often miss the opportunity to sit with folks who are different than us, right? Even if it's digitally, right? But to sit and be present, and rather than kind of escape to what we are being fed that is familiar and comfortable.
Yeah.
That's right.
What-
And that's that work. That's that work that I was talking about. Yeah, you got to do the work.
Exactly. What do you guys think? You know, when I was reading too, and John, you alluded to this part. This is for everyone to, I think, just jump in with what we think. You know, that you kind of alluded to the fact of like, you know, it might need to be regulated by us. I mean, regulated by like rules in the government, or also like there's a level of self-regulation. And I talk about that in my last book, where you know there is a pattern specifically in modernity of about of regulation lags about 30 to 50 years behind innovation. right? You can go to the automobile industry, and then when you start getting seatbelts and stuff like that later, basically like something's exciting and amazing, and we all just adopt it, and then if people start dying, or people start having lung disease, or people start, you know what I mean? Like, and then we go, oh, let's make a few rules about this. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whether it's, you know, whether it's the coal industry, whether it's smoking, whether it's, I mean, I literally, for the research for my last book, like the ads around smoking 70 years ago were absurd, you know, I mean, like how prominently they were marketed and stuff compared now to what we know now. All that to say, we're still in infancy in the tech, right? 2007 is the prominent peak year with the iPhone, so we're 13 years away from that. That's very short still, right? I think I would still consider us in the stage of, oh, this is exciting and incredible and amazing, and we're kind of wide-eyed about it. So like, how do we make sure that we don't just wait 50 years till probably some good rules will come in? You know what I mean? What do we do now to kind of like, and we've already heard some really good stuff, Tech Sabbath, stuff like that. I'm loving that, but how can we keep rolling with that? Because I think that's what people are looking for now. Like, this is hurting me a little bit. What do I do?
I think. Let me just observe one thing. I think, Jeff, you're putting this wonderfully into historical context, and I completely agree with you. Don't despair, folks. You know, we're gonna solve this. We're gonna get it right sized in proportion to our lives. But it might take a while at scale across society, where we create new etiquette and protocols. Okay, it's all right to check your phone then, but no, now we all agree it's rude to do it.
Yeah.
Doing it then.
What is it, France or whatever, that it's actually like it's illegal to check after a certain hour or something?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's like there's a workplace rule in some European country where you can't check your email after a certain time because they're starting to realize like that just kills you.
But so we're gonna catch up to this. We will. I promise you. You know.
Mm-hmm.
We'll learn to channel the good and reject some of the bad and figure out norms and moderate it. But it's going to take a while. I don't know if it's going to take 50 years, but I would say give it 10. We're going to do it at scale. But so then it's incumbent on the people here, people out there, people listening on live or stream or pod. We're having this conversation so that you can make choices for yourself, right? You're not bound by this. I mean, others may still be bound by it. You're going to help release them to freedom by modeling it for yourself, right? Mm-hmm. And so Jeff Bethke, the most tech connected guy I know, the guy, what is it? He said Instagram's my love language or something great.
So yeah, the internet is my job.
Yeah, Instagram is his love language. Something like that. Anyway, it's fantastic.
You just put me on blast in front of the whole nation, but it is true. but it is true. I love Instagram.
And so the thing is, if you recognize, totally. You as a leader recognize the deleterious effects of this, and you're standing against it for yourself and your family, and you're sharing that word out to folks.
Yeah.
And it's
similar to your Steve Jobs and Bill Gates point, that like that just granted with the work that me and Alyssa do, we've just reached the logical conclusion probably a little quicker than most of just like, oh, this does not go well. You have to have the thing I talk about too a lot is like, there's never been a concentration of power of this magnitude. Think about, a couple hundred engineers in Silicon Valley over the last decade can impact 2 to 3 billion people, most likely, right? There's that concentration power is absurd, right? Mm-hmm. There's never been that level of maybe a few argument, for argument's sake, a few, but it's crazy. And so, and their mission is to make profit, right? These are like public tech companies that have gone, have IPOs. Like that's not evil, that's not wrong. I do wish they would probably act with a little bit more ethics. But like they are living within the realm of exactly what a business is supposed to do. Mm-hmm. And that is get your attention, get more people. Like, here's the thing people don't realize is our eyeballs and our bodies are the currency, right? If the product is free, if the tech is free, you are the product, not the actual app, right? If you're not paying for that thing, you're the product. You're being bought and sold. Your eyeballs are being commodified. And if you don't have a resisting formation against that, if you don't have kind of a resisting, competing way in which you form yourself into God's image over and against the quick soundbite, the newsfeed, you will lose that battle. Just granted to the scale and size of that Godzilla,
Can I jump in?
Sorry, that awakened me a little. Sorry, I didn't mean to go,
No, Jeff, we're bringing some energy, bringing some fight. Yeah. So,
but it's true though.
So tracking that point back to a point that Joel made a few days ago, right? It's the same point. Big media, that does not exist to actually feed you with real narratives about who
Yeah.
you're supposed to be. They exist to get you to react, to draw you in, to lure you in. They prey on your vulnerabilities. It doesn't mean they're bad human beings. They're just doing a job. It's their job. The same thing is true about the tech folks. You know, the operations of Zuckerberg and Tim Cook and all these guys, whoever they are, is to lure you in, make you attached, and then give them a lot of money somehow or other. And don't think of bad human beings, but it's not the defining narrative of who you are. The defining narrative of who you are is something different. And going back to Marissa's point, to elevate it for just a second here, you know, the Martin Buber point, right? You know, Martin Buber's most famous book is I'm sure a bunch of you know is I Thou. I Thou is the whole concept of recognizing, you know, what is transcendent and eternal and everlasting in the other opposite you, right? You know, when you're in that relationship with somebody, you are entering into an authentic, real experience of the world. That's the magic of it. That's the electricity. And we are just never going to, you know, get that in the like, click, subscribe, whatever world. You're just never going to get that. You just can't. Yeah. I mean, it's okay. It's complimentary. It's fine. I do it a lot myself, blah, blah, blah. It's all good up to a point. But,
so, you know, if I wonder if, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Pastor Joel.
Well, I want to kick it to you, actually.
Pastor Joel, I like the ring to that.
It's a question for Robin, actually. So I'm thinking about, going back to history, how the people of the kingdom of God took the technology of the day and leveraged it in a way that it had been used to oppress them. Okay, so I'm thinking about the Roman road system. All right, the Roman road system was created not so that the Romans could like bless all the people. It was so they could conquer them, you know, and so they could get their troops and stuff there faster. And then Paul and the people of God and the people of Jesus took it and used it to spread the love of Jesus everywhere and like flip the whole narrative upside down. So I wonder, and the question then for Robin is like, you're working in a lot of groups that they're in some way they're systematically oppressed by the systems of the prevailing time and culture. How do you see ways in which we can flip this technology, this moment into the radical community that we're talking about?
Well, so my point that I was going to say, it actually speaks to this. And going back to what Jeff is talking about, that, you know, if the app is free, we become the product. You know, technology shapes anthropology. It shapes our creatureliness. And when we are not attuned to a holistic theology of technology or understanding the theologic of technology, we can become oppressed by the very thing that we try to use to liberate ourselves. And so a lot of the work that I do is in the dominant culture of white folks, of helping white folks understand that we've all been conscripted into supremacy culture. We've all been conscripted, in even people of color, we've been conscripted into this culture that has got a boot on our neck. And how do we actually unhinge from these things? If technology, and we're using technology right now, but my hope is that this use of technology is actually flipping the script on the normative ways of using technology. My own podcast is an attempt to bridge the gap and connect the dots for people. I hope that it's flipping the script on normative uses of technology. I'm not trying to make $1 million or whatever. I'm not trying to buy my way into capitalism. I'm actually trying to bring us back in line to a theologic, to an ethics of community. And when we attune ourselves to that kind of work, which is rooted in relationship, technology takes on a whole new form, I think.
That's a really good point. You know, that reminds me too. I just read an article yesterday about, it was like a long interview with James Corden, you know, the late night host, and he was talking about actually how there's been so many silver linings to this pandemic, specifically given that it's he no longer has to be the kind of the dance around, do a skit for 3.5 minutes commercial. Like there's a long form nature to, like, I just want to talk to my guests for 27 minutes and let people watch it. And he's like, there is, he said he's just been surprised by that it's a little bit more freeing for him. It's a little bit more, you know, democratize might be the word, in the sense
Yeah.
of like it doesn't have to be all, and I think that certainly is something that we need to recognize. I think is a good part of technology when you can really, like you said, Robin, lean into relationships, long form conversations, face to face, eye to eye, stuff like that. So I love that. As we wrap up these next couple minutes, what's one last thought I had too? I'd love to get your guys' thought on this. This thought experiment I always kind of am wrestling with too is like I've been trying to think, like, and we mentioned this earlier, the news feed, right, and the algorithm. There's this like ethereal beast out there that's crafting our reality for us. Now, imagine how strange it was. I thought this a little bit ago where I was like, imagine how strange it would be too, though, and how this damages us if you have a whole street of neighborhoods of homes. And, when back in the day, when everyone used to go get their newspaper, whatever that thing is, I've heard about it. It sounds cool, But when they used to go out to their porch with their coffee and get their newspaper, right? In general, most people are getting the identical newspaper. At least where I grew up, there's the News Tribune, Tacoma, Washington. That's the only Tacoma newspaper there is. That's what everyone is getting on their porch. Imagine if when you go out on your porch, all 15 homes are literally getting a different newspaper. And I don't mean just like a different brand, but I mean like it's perfectly weirdly skewed to them. Like their front page news is only their front page news because the algorithm has been shaped to them.
Right.
You can kind of see then more how that could be really more damaging, right? And I think we don't understand that's exactly what the news feed is. It's giving a specific, curated, different reality to, however many people have Facebook. I don't know, 2 billion people. And that's kind of harmful, But I don't know. What do you guys, I think that would be a good thing to talk about.
Well, I think you raise a perfect point around the ways in which the algorithm is created is not for the common good. It is
that's a good point. Yeah.
it is actually for the benefit of the company in this way. Facebook, right?
Yeah.
Instagram is the same way. So when we actually unhinge from the practices of the feed and actually lean into tangible relationship, we then no longer become conscripted into the algorithm. We become conscripted into relationship and to revolutionary love. And what does scripture say about love? It's the thing that surpasses all things. And so when we actually lean into love in relationship, and I could say that talking with Calvin and talking with Joel, that I have a love for both of these humans. And when we actually leverage that love, we're no longer a slave to the algorithm, right? We become compatriots to love, and we build a better world.
That's a really good point. Yeah, whatever we give our attention, we're kind of formed into. Yeah. Go ahead, Joel.
Just to add some more practical, for those who might be listening to, okay, what do I do about this? I think, following on what Robin said, use the tech for relationship, but also get out in your community, right now, COVID permitting. But like when I'm out in my community, I live in a small town in the rural South. Okay. And everybody's telling me how awful things are out there and how divided and everything. And I went to our racial justice and peace and equality march. It was incredible. Like nobody was fighting, nobody was screaming at each other. There was like one heckler. It doesn't mean that the problems are real and there's not deep pain. But if all I did was sit in my house and read Facebook, I would think, oh my God, the streets are burning down.
Right.
Right.
Actually,
Yeah.
like, oh, look at all these amazing Black, white, Hispanic, old, young, Christian, not gay, straight, right? Here we are at this peace and equality march. And that's not what Facebook was showing me.
So
That's a really good point.
I think there's. I'd love if we use a minute here to drop down on some practical bits here. If you could. So get out. COVID permitting, get out with real human beings and stop inhabiting the destructive cycle of the algorithm. When you say it that way, it sounds so insidious, doesn't it?
It does. It does.
It's
Sounds like I Robot or something. Will Smith's about to pop
Right.
out.
Right.
Yeah.
very,
Robin said, "I'm no longer a slave to the algorithm." I was thinking that worship song. I think we need JBJ to do a remix.
That's true. Yeah, exactly.
So just practically here, how do you so tech Sabbath? I mean, so tech limiting. Jeff, how do you do it? What's your way?
I mean, yeah, there's a bunch of different ways that we're always trying to reform, think through this for us. I mean, yeah, the tech Sabbath is one. That's part of a little larger philosophy that we've tried to work on that I think I got from, can't remember where, but kind of the 1-1-1 rule that's been really helpful to us. So I try to have 1 hour a day that is just disconnected, 1 day a week, which is the tech Sabbath, and then 1 week a year. And I think that was Andy Crouch actually where I first heard that. But yeah, something like that has been really powerful for us. One thing I would like to tell people too is, and we've kind of alluded to it a lot here of, you are formed and shaped into the image of whatever you're giving your attention and your affection to. That is just human nature.
Right.
And so if you don't want to watch a bunch of TV, don't make it the focal central thing that your couches face, right? Same thing with phones, right? Like that's like a 1990s example, obviously, because who, even has a TV anymore, at some level. No, I'm joking, but I'm a millennial where it's like we watch everything on our phones and our iPads. But like, so that same truth with the phone, right? Like, don't have it in your pocket all the time. Why is it in your pocket all the time? Why is it? Why is it there? Do you realize, like, just go through the logical conclusion of the fear there too, right? Like, especially when I talk to my peers, different millennials, like there's a fear when you're like, just leave it at home. Just how about you put it in like a drawer, and they go, well, what if someone dies? What if I need to be reached? It's like, you do realize all of human history, all of civilization across all different geographical locations has been generally fine with not being able to be reached 24/7 up until about 10 years ago. Like, I think we're good. I think we're like, how quickly that formed us into we need to be reached every second of every day or else the worst will happen, right? I live in Hawaii where 12 people get bit by a shark on average every single year. That does not mean I'm not getting into the ocean, right? Because the ridiculous nature of those stats is like, so, 15 million people get in the ocean every year. Like, you do the math there, right? So I think it's similar to that of just like, leave it at home. Like we use this phrase here where we call it like keep our phones leashed. Like, I have literally a cabinet right over here in my office where it's like, it has to be on the leash of the plug, and I'll go check it. And my head is like buried in a closet when I need to respond to people. And it's uncomfortable and it's annoying, but that also means I'm not going to sit there for an hour and scroll Instagram. You know what I mean? So
That's
like those kind of practices, they shape your attention and your affections in a different way, where it kind of puts the tech on the fringes where it is very helpful, right? Put it on the outside. Don't put it at the center.
Keep your phone leashed.
I like
It's where you got to, right? If it's unleashed, pun intended, then it, in your pocket, then it'll be unleashed, and how it ravages your heart. But I can continue.
No,
Well-
I love what you said there really quickly, because there's a bit of this that's like, know yourself, be honest with yourself about who you are, about what you're.
They're not universal either. Yeah.
Right. Like, again, if you got a lot of fear attached to this thing, then you know what? If you want to live free from fear, we gotta put that thing down. There's a whole like, what do I really want in life, right? Where do I really want to be? How do I really want to be? And you have a chance to make a decision here.
Yeah, Robin, what were you gonna say there?
Well, I just wanted to piggyback on a little bit of what you were saying, because author and movement leader Adrienne Marie Brown says, "What you pay attention to grows." And so, if we to Marissa's point, if we don't want to be tethered to this thing that is going to incite fear and anxiety and whatnot, what we pay attention to grows. And so, what are we paying attention to? Are we paying attention to the tangible relationships in our life? Are we paying attention to the human practices of being creatures together and fostering togetherness? Or are we paying attention to our news feed and the alerts? I mean, I've turned off almost all of the alerts because I don't want my phone buzzing in my pocket all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, you be in charge of when you go to it, not it be in charge of when it gets your attention. That's a very radical difference. Any more nuggets anyone's got? What do you say, John?
I'm just going to connect one dot there, which was, totally agree with that. That don't focus on the thing you don't want to focus on, or it'll grow. You be the master of the tool rather than the tool be the master of you. And Marissa's point is like, these are principles. They don't apply to everybody the same way, right? These are principles of freedom. So nobody's saying you should do X or Y or Z exactly. You might be the type of person who can have it with you all the time and not have it dominate you. Okay, got it. That's you're a different kind of person than some of us, right? But just make judgments around the way the principles apply to you, but know that the principle you're driving to is one which is basically love God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself, and somehow that is God's electricity, both in the the abstract and eternal, and the the alpha and omega and all that, and the human beings around you somehow in real life, for real, not a tool, not a technology, not an app, not an algorithm, right? So
yeah, this conversation, I feel like we could have kept going, and this was actually one of my favorite. I love this. So I'm going to close this out, but real quick before that, Robin, anything, just any nuggets you want to drop, any sites you want to drop, any, wordsmith things that you were just crushing us with, you want to drop again?
Well, I think I just want to offer my thanks to the invitation and the hospitality that you've created. I feel very welcome here. And I think this is an example of the kind of togetherness that we want to foster in the world. And when we put down our phones, I mean, we are using technology, but we are here together. I feel like we're on my front porch having a drink, and there's something to that kind of work. That's heart work. And when we focus on heart work instead of outcomes and the all-American dollar, when we stop worshiping those things and we start actually not measuring the distance between us, but embracing the distance between us and the God spirit in between us, we become different people. And so I just feel grateful that I'm in conversation with y'all. I look forward to our work together, and I look forward to participating in Suture the Wounds of this soul of America.
Amen.
Amen. So good. I
Let's
love that.
go,
Well,
Rob.
it was a treat. Yeah, it was an absolute treat. So thank you. But okay, before I toss it back to John, thank you guys for joining to discuss American Awakening, 8 Principles to Restore the Soul of America. Release is July 28th, so we're coming in hot like a biscuit, as I like to say. And available to pre-order now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Walmart, or wherever you buy great books, not where you buy terrible books. The script doesn't say that. I just said that. It's been said that this book is perfectly suited to be the post-pandemic racial awakening bounce back playbook, which we believe to be true. And I think we've been showing that in these conversations. So please consider checking that out, supporting it in that way. And don't forget to join us every Friday, depending on where you're listening, or just anywhere you want to catch the podcast on our American Awakening in Focus feature on live stream and on the podcast. We have 4 more chapters to go, and I can't wait. It's been a blast. So back to you, John, to wrap us up.
Deb, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Robin, and thank you all of you for being with us today. Out there in the audience, we love you guys. We think about you all the time. We keep you in our prayers. We show up for you because we're trying to bring a message of faith and hope and love and light and life, and that God's got you, and that we're supposed to be in this together. And bringing us out today, can you possibly touch the song that you brought us in on, Josh Jacob? I don't know.
Sure.
Let's go.
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah, I'll try it again. Yeah, I got a lot of knowledge from this talk. So thank you guys for sharing your knowledge. I got a lot to think about. So with that being said, I'm going to sing I Surrender All again. And peace and freedom. Here we go. All to Jesus I surrender. All to him I freely give. I will love and trust him. In his presence daily live. All to Jesus I surrender, humbly at his feet I bow. Worldly pleasures are forsaken. Take me, Jesus, take me now. I surrender. I surrender. I surrender. Ooh, oh. to Jesus I surrender. Lord, I give myself to thee. Fill me with thy love and power. Let the blessing fall on me. I surrender. I surrender. I surrender. All to thee, my blessed Savior. All to thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender all. Oh, the joy of full salvation, sin and death defeated, glory to his name. I surrender. I surrender. I surrender. Oh, 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 to thee, my blessed Savior. Oh, to thee, my blessed Savior. I surrender.